How you doing? IB Nation Sports Talk up and rolling on a Monday. Hope you're having a good one. It's getting kind of nasty here in South Bend right now. That the rain that was going through Chicago at the end of the Cubs game is rolling through right now. Just as we were coming back in, my satellite had been out for a good 20 minutes or so. You know, my direct TV. So it was just coming back on when I was stepping in the room to start the show. So
the hard rain still affects the satellite, huh?
Oh, it absolutely do.
Man,
you fall for any April Fool's Day jokes today?
I did not. I for a split second, the local police department, I don't know if you saw this on social media, the South Bend Police Department put out that for the summer, they're going to have an alternate shoe, and it's going to be tactical Crocs. And they did like a whole video. Like it was pretty funny, actually. I know the chief.
I have not seen that.
I need to text him. It was they put a lot of effort into that particular April Fool's joke. It was pretty funny. But without school being on right now, there's just not a lot of interaction with other humans. So
are you spring break right now?
Are you guys breaking it up?
Yeah. Oh, till when?
Well, we were supposed to go back next Monday, so a week from today, but that's the solar eclipse day. So that's going to be an e-learning day.
Giving you that day off. Okay.
Everything extends until next Tuesday, which is kind of nice.
All right. Yeah. Very nice.
And of course, first day off, got sick.
It rained, but you got to watch the Cubs win. So you got something. You
got to watch the home opener. Right? It was a good day, 5-0. I believe 4 out of the last 6 home openers have been shutouts in the Cubs' favor. So, it's always good to get
Very nice. Wrigley. Very nice. I saw Maddie Westbeld with a little tweet today. Because, everyone's kind of waiting to see what Maddie's going to do with her future.
Oh, boy. She's teasing us.
She said April Fool's Day can't be the right day to announce anything.
She's probably right, actually. That's actually a pretty good call on her part. That's pretty. I like the fact that she's got a little sense of humor about
it. Pretty well done, I thought. Yeah. So I guess maybe we'll see if April 2nd is the day to announce anything.
The sooner the better, as far as I'm concerned. Now, are we waiting for, because I know we're going to talk about the women's basketball team and everything. Mm-hmm. Are we waiting for multiple announcements at this point? Sonia Citron, Maddie Westbeld. Well,
Sonia's got another year. She's only a junior.
So, okay, yeah. Cool. But I know
think the two biggest ones would be like Maddie and Nat Marshall, probably.
Nat Marshall.
Both, I can't remember. I'd have to go back and look how many games Nat was able to play as a freshman. I can't remember off the top of my head. Like,
gotcha.
I think she played that year. I'd have to go back and look because she had, some injuries like in high school and stuff like that coming into school. But those are the 2 seniors on the roster. Anna DeWolf is done.
Right.
This was her 5th year, so she is out of eligibility. So those would be the 2.
Okay. I thought there was more. I thought Kylie Watson was a senior.
I guess
going off
there's a potential. Here, so. Yeah, she is. There's a potential announcement there, I think, as well.
All right.
Yeah, you're right. Forgot about
my announcements lined up. I don't, I want to make sure I'm keeping an eye out because you never know when one's going to roll in.
Right. Well, we do have a lot of Notre Dame women's basketball to talk about today. Unfortunately, their season came to an end with their loss to Oregon State Friday in the Sweet 16. But a loss is a loss, but this one not just a loss, I guess, because it comes with some controversy. One of, as it turns out, probably one of the 3 bigger women's basketball controversies from the weekend when you throw in like the Kim Mulkey stuff and then you had the stuff up in Portland with the distance of the 3-point line that we'll talk about in rapid fire.
What is that?
I know. And that kind of swallowed up a little bit the nose ring, but Hannah Hidalgo's nose ring, maybe the most controversial piece of jewelry in NCAA tournament history, as it turned out.
So I didn't get to see the game live, and I'm at this visit with my son and we're doing whatever. And, for a parent, it's pretty boring. Let's be honest. And so, we're watching a practice and I've seen 1,000 college practices. Right. And so, I'm drifting on and off and I'm looking at my phone. Right. And I see the still shot or the video. I can't remember which one it was of the 2 trainers like operating.
Well, just to correct you, because
Okay,
one was a trainer and one's a doctor. So
just fair enough.
Just to differentiate.
That's fine. I appreciate that.
I don't want to insult anyone.
Nope, I don't either. Believe me, I don't want
to. One is an athletic trainer, the head athletic trainer for women's basketball, Ann Marquez, and the other is Dr. Crystal Higginson. So
they're going to town on her face, and I had no idea, and like the caption was not helpful at all with whatever I was looking at, and like you can see like the surgical scissors and the whole thing. I thought she was getting stitches on her face.
And I'm watching the whole thing as well, because it's like Hannah commits a foul at the end of the first quarter, right? And then the next thing you know, go through the commercial, the timeout in between quarters, all that kind of stuff. Didn't really, I think like right as the break is ending, I look over at, like, I see who's on the floor.
Right.
And then I look over at the bench and I'm like, what are they doing to Hannah's face over there?
Right. Seriously.
Because it's like, because I'm like, did she hit her nose when she, it's kind of a phantom foul to begin with. I know you didn't get to see, the whole thing, but like, did she hit her nose and,
right.
Like when that happened, did she get poked in the eye? Because it's all up, they're up between the nose and the eye. And I can't really tell and it keeps going on and on and on. And obviously I'm trying to kind of, keep an eye over there when I can while the game is going on, while obviously watching the game and calling the game on the radio.
Right.
There was like all this activity. And then I did see her, like, she like all of a sudden she like yanks away from whatever they're doing. And she's like laying down, like this jolt just went through her face. And it's like, what is going on over there?
That sounds awful, by the way.
Yeah.
It just sounds awful. And so I had no idea what happened is what I was getting at. I had no idea what happened. I saw she only scored 10 points and I was like, well, she got her face bashed in or something. I don't know what happened. So of course she only scored 10 points. And I find out the whole controversy behind it. And you and I haven't had a chance to really talk about it. Because we were planning on maybe doing a show on Saturday and all this other stuff.
And they had one we were going to, and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah. And then I was like, well, you're so close to the team. I didn't want to like poke the bear after the loss and, that whole thing. So it's letting you have your space. But this is the first time you and I have had a chance to talk about it.
We came back Friday night, by the way.
Did you really?
Got back late Friday night. And I slept as much as possible Saturday.
I bet you did.
So, yes.
And then we had a holiday yesterday, obviously, too. So, you kind of, not a whole lot of communication generally happens on Easter Sunday. So,
yeah. So the whole thing becomes an issue because officials apparently told her before the game, they saw it. They told her if she covered it with one of those little pieces of like scary strip tape, which I've seen her do this season, cover it with that. They told her that she'd keep it in. And then for whatever reason, at the end of the first quarter, there's still, kind of some murkiness in terms of who exactly told her that before the game. Was it a different official, than the one who told her she had to take it out? Because then they told her at the end of the first quarter, she's got to take it out because it's a point of emphasis during the NCAA tournament, apparently.
This is the third round, right?
Right. Third game. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Third round.
Yeah.
Third round of the tournament. Now it's an emphasis.
Now it's a point of emphasis.
Like 6 other officials, it was not an emphasis for them, apparently, but now it's a point of emphasis.
So, and all the other assistant officials that are there as well, because it's not just the 3 on the floor. There's other ones that are, you got backups and you got all this other stuff, and none of them said anything until between the first and second quarter of the third round. It's ridiculous.
Right. USMA, apparently expert on nose rings. He says it must have been a threaded post on the nose ring. I have no idea. I have no idea what that is.
As I went back and watched the video,
I always just assumed just a stud,
they were turning it.
They were working.
They were turning.
Hard.
Yes. But it must have been. I don't know what to say. If I was ever thinking about getting a nose ring, I'm definitely not now. Let's just put it that way. I didn't look all that comfortable getting it taken out.
No, especially if you ever do want to take it out, I guess that would, doesn't seem like that's the way to go. So Hidalgo sits on the bench for the first 4 minutes and 9 seconds of the second quarter while they're working on it. And of course, that's just game time. She's probably over there for close to 15 minutes by the time it's all said and done. They were working on it. As we said, the athletic, you had an athletic trainer and a team doctor over there working on it. So here is Hidalgo's post-game explanation. This is not post-game press conference. This is in the locker room after the game.
Told me in the beginning that I was able to cover it up, and then second quarter they said you can't wear it.
Your nose ring?
Yeah.
Did that take you out of the flow at all, having to come out and get that taken care of?
Yeah, I'm on a run. Scored 2 buckets, and now I have to sit out 5 minutes straight. Dealing with the nose ring was kind of BS.
Kind of BS.
I don't blame her.
Disagree with that.
That was
via WNDU, by the way.
Okay.
Just for the official credit.
I got to say she handled that pretty well, especially sitting in the locker room after the loss. You already know that you lost. Season's over. I think she handled that pretty well. I don't know that I would have handled it quite that well. I would have been pretty ticked off about the whole situation personally.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of different emotions going on there because the season's also just ended because of the loss. It's not like you get a mulligan, you get another try, you get to come back another day like every other game during the season. You're done. You know? So that was it. Vince, is this just the dumbest controversy ever?
I'm trying to think of ones that are worse, and not many are coming to mind, especially with the stakes that were involved. You know what I mean? Like, this is a one and done situation. If you take the best player off the court for an extended period of time when you already have a short bench for something so stupid, that if you knew that this is what you were going to do as an official, then you should have said something pregame. Be on the same page, whatever. To do that in the middle of the game, I have a huge problem with that. And so it's a ridiculous controversy. I just don't like the stakes that were tied to it. You know what I mean? This wasn't a game in December. You know what I mean? This is the NCAA tournament of all things. And this is when you decide that this is when this needs to take place. I don't know. I have, if I'm the head of officials or something, I have a huge problem with that. Again, the women's game is growing right now. It's on the upward, swing.
You've got one of the biggest young stars in the game.
Right. And Notre Dame is a huge
sitting out for, what does that come to? Whatever fraction. 4+ minutes. That's a long time.
And so you have one of the most dynamic players, first team All-American, defensive player of the year for the ACC, all of these different things. You take her off the floor. You essentially take Notre Dame out of the tournament, which having Notre Dame in the tournament means eyeballs on your product.
To put it into perspective, she missed the first 4 minutes and 9 seconds of the second quarter. That is more time than she missed in the previous 3 games combined, going back to the ACC championship game.
There you go.
That's how, especially when you're talking about a shorthanded roster and the whole thing, her importance means even more. She's a first team All-American. She's one of 5 freshmen ever, remember, to be named first team All-American. So that is significant to have a first team All-American sitting on your bench at a crucial time of the game in a game you end up losing by 5 points at the end of the day.
It was for an eighth of the game. Essentially 5 minutes is an eighth, but it's an eighth of the game, basically, that you have your best player forced to be on the bench. I don't like it. I don't like it.
We'll get to some of these devil's advocates and everything else. I will say that it's good to see that this whole thing has drawn nothing but mocking of the NCAA from most of the national media outlets that I've seen, over the weekend. Matt is asking, did Oregon State coaches have anything to do with this, like some are suggesting? I don't know that we were the root of it, but here's my response to that, because I haven't heard it from a lot of places. What happened was, we don't have Holly Rowe to do sideline reporting for us on the Notre Dame radio network.
This is true.
ESPN has, and I know that she was able to at least go behind the bench and kind of, get some initial information from the parts of the broadcast I saw. There wasn't a whole lot other than she's got a nose ring. She was told to take it out. So what happened was Karen Keys, who does the commentary with me, we were basically flying blind that first half, only seeing what we're seeing. We have no idea exactly what happened. So halftime comes. I do my halftime ritual, which is go find the nearest restroom. Do that. And then I come back. So I come back, start getting my, like halftime stats and all that stuff together for halftime stuff. Karen comes back, sits down, and says that she was told that Oregon State, someone from Oregon State had pointed it out and said something. Now,
wow.
Again, like whether or not that actually happened, I don't know. But what Hidalgo was told was obviously by an official. There was nothing from the Notre Dame,
sure.
Either Hannah Hidalgo or Niele Ivey that, said that Oregon State said anything. And the Oregon State head coach, Scott Ruick, after the game basically said that, he didn't know anything about it. And
no, of course he didn't.
That kind of stuff. So, USA Today reporter Tracy Armour tweeted that she talked to Hidalgo after the game. Hidalgo said an official had said something before the game about the nose ring, but Hidalgo was told she could cover it up and still play, which again, she has done before, right?
Right.
So according to Rule 1, Section 25, Article 7 of the NCAA Women's Basketball Rulebook, head decorations, headwear, helmets, and jewelry are illegal. I'm just glad they included helmets, Vince, because I mean,
seriously,
I had legit concern that a women's basketball team might run out of the tunnel, like wearing hockey helmets or something with face masks and just get after it out there on the floor. They might come out with lacrosse helmets or something, like full masks and, just like, who knows what's going to happen at that point when they
start
come out wearing
people.
Helmets,
Let's go.
Yeah. It's like, in what world does banning the wearing of helmets need to be included in a basketball rule? Like,
seriously,
what? That's in the rule. That's written in an NCAA rule. No helmets in a women's basketball game. What?
Well, here's the other thing, Sean, is if I'm reading this rule that you just read off to us, right? It says head decorations, headwear, helmets, and jewelry are illegal. By definition, aren't headbands headwear?
That's my next question.
And people do those things.
How are we defining headwear?
Skylar Diggins always has. She had a line term.
of. Yeah,
Skylar Diggins has a line of those things.
I mean, Hidalgo wears, like that headband thing, and a lot of players wear those things out there.
That's illegal too. Like, I don't know.
Apparently, and there are players who wear literally like fake hair out there on the field.
Yeah, that's
not
true.
On the field, on the court. So
yeah.
If headwear is prohibited, then shouldn't all these players be checked for extensions before they go out there on the floor? Like if we're checking nose rings?
Seriously.
I'm being facetious, but I'm also being a little bit serious. If they're checking for nose rings, why aren't they checking for extensions if headwear is part of this rule?
Right? Right. 100%. I mean, because, as somebody said, if you're playing devil's advocate, if a rule's a rule, then why are we not following all of the rules to a T?
Right. Who are they protecting with this rule? Like, legitimately, who are they protecting with this?
It's supposed to be player safety, right? So nothing gets snagged on it and ripped out of her nose. Like, that's my guess, right? I mean, that's
in theory, but this is just another victimless crime.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Like
100%.
Why is this a point of emphasis in the tournament when we know that she's not the only player who's been wearing a nose ring all year?
And that's my other thing. Check every single woman in this tournament, and I guarantee you there's other nose rings. I guarantee it.
Right. Exactly. And I'll get to more of that in a second. I will just say Joe Vasili, I think is his name. Total clown. The guy that was the official in the game. Total clown. Yeah. Like, give me a break, man.
That tracks.
Give me a break. But I saw someone trying to compare this to, well, if you drive over the speed limit all the time and, and then you're complaining about the one time that you get, stopped for speeding and you're complaining about, like, that's the comparison. To me, it's more like not wearing a seatbelt, because again, it's a victimless crime. Like if you're literally out there speeding, you could harm somebody else. The seatbelt, the nose ring, who are you harming but yourself?
That's exactly what I was thinking in my head.
And if you're wearing a nose ring, you go back to the helmets. Like if you're wearing a nose ring, maybe you need a helmet, by their rationale that you're going to suffer that much because you're wearing a nose ring and you're going to get it caught up on something. But literally, what are you going to fall down like exactly on your nose? And like you said, get it caught on something. What are you going to get it caught on somebody's hair?
Right.
Like, I guess in theory, you could get it caught on somebody's jersey, but it hadn't happened all year. And again, you're only harming yourself. So who are we protecting in this? And why is it a point of emphasis now that the NCAA tournament has rolled around? We're going to get to that in just a second. But first, here is Niele Ivey after the game with her thoughts. She was asked about this whole thing.
I didn't know what happened, so I guess it was in the point of emphasis in the Sweet 16 with jewelry, and she's had a nose ring the entire season, so just wish we'd have known beforehand, but can't control it, so we had to move on. But yeah, I mean, stoppage of play is never great when you're trying to have flow.
Okay, yep. Never great when you're trying to have flow for sure. And the natural chorus of, well, ignorance for the rule is no excuse for the rule. You know, you should have known. And somebody, I think it was John, if I can find it here, John in the comments earlier says, if the rules say no jewelry, it's not rocket science. Don't wear the jewelry. Well, here are a couple of comments from a couple of other head coaches. South Carolina head coach Dawn Staley said the NCAA must not have had the stamina to enforce the jewelry policy in the regular season, but has the stamina to do it now.
Wow. Okay.
Boom. Ole Miss head coach Yolette McEwen, who, of course, lost to Notre Dame last week, a week ago today, as a matter of fact, said, quote, my players have been playing with no nose rings all season, end quote. So is it on the head coaches and the players to know the NCAA's points of emphasis, or is it on the NCAA, if they're going to now make this a point of emphasis, don't they have some sort of obligation to tell the players and the coaches that this is now a point of emphasis? You should not go out there with any kind of jewelry, helmets, or anything else when you're on the basketball court.
So I do have something to say about this because you and I were both head coaches. And every year, even at the high school level, you have to go to a rules meeting. Okay. Every year. And it's the same old drivel, and it's usually pretty boring. But like the last slide of the presentation always says, here are this year's rules of emphasis. This is what we have told our umpires or officials in this matter to look out for. And this is what they're going to look out for. Like one year was, you know, the baseballs have to be a certain brand, or, you know, whatever the case may be. Right. This is going to be
typically
point of
something
emphasis.
Different with each season.
Right.
And, you know, at the start of the season, there usually are new points of emphasis.
Absolutely. And great. But guess what they do? They tell the coaches so that they can then relay that to the players. When I coached football, we would have a scrimmage and we would invite refs to the scrimmage, right? And these aren't like the normal, like the big scrimmages. These are like scrimmages that you would have in the summertime or whatever. And the refs would like to be there just to practice their craft or whatever. And at the end, you'd bring both teams together. The refs would give some sort of a presentation and they would be like, hey, these are the rules of emphasis for this season. And they would let the coaches and the players know what the rules of emphasis, you know, the points of emphasis were going to be for that upcoming fall season. So long story short, if they decided, as Niele Ivey said, in the Sweet 16, apparently, to make this a point of emphasis, then they should tell the coaches that, hey, we know that we've let this slide all season, but starting in the Sweet 16, we're going to make this a point of emphasis. If that's the case, then, of course, the coaches are going to go to their players and they're going to be like, hey, you know, I know this sucks, but they're going to be looking for it. So we got to take it off. We got to take it off. You know what I mean? If it's a quote unquote point of emphasis, then the officials need to let the coaches know, period.
Exactly. And like DJ was saying earlier, he says this is not going to be a popular opinion. The Hannah nose ring debacle lies with Coach Ivey. Doesn't matter if they let Hannah wear it all year. It's a rule. He is super ticked off about the second quarter that affected Hannah. Agree with the second part of that. You know, again,
But if the officials never let Ivey know that this is a new
and you've
point
been doing
emphasis.
it all year, and it's it's not like, I mean, don't you have to like give them credit for making sure that the team wasn't wearing helmets out there? You know, like, come on,
she's doing her job.
There were no helmets. There were no helmets present.
I can guarantee you that they did not let the coaches know this is going to be a new point of emphasis. Is it a rule? Sure, it's a rule. But do you know how many like you and I could scour the rule book for every sport and we could find innocuous rules that are not enforced on a regular basis.
Correct.
They're just not. And so the whole crowd that's like,
a lot of times what happens though is you run up across this pedantic little guy or gal
right
who wants to prove that they know all the rules, and so they're going to enforce every stupid little thing. I don't know if that's what happened here. It does seem weird that you didn't hear about with all these other games going on. You had 32 teams playing this weekend. You telling me nobody else had a nose ring and it didn't, at some point become an issue? Like someone didn't leave it in, someone didn't leave an earring in, any of this stuff.
And the men's tournament too, for that matter.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like I've seen plenty of guys with the little taper on the ear, the whole thing, so that they, whatever. But I'm sorry. If this is a point of emphasis, then you needed to let the coach know. And let's say that they did. Let's say they let Niele Ivey know. I have a hard time believing that.
Apparently, after the game, someone from the NCAA walked up to her and handed her a printed piece of paper with that rule written on it, like the exact rule that we just talked about that we read. Yeah.
Thanks for the after the fact.
Right. Here you go. So you're walking into your press conference. You know what the rule is.
Yeah. Appreciate it.
But with all these pre-tournament meetings, you couldn't have said anything in advance. Okay.
Yeah, and again, I have a problem with that.
Why this is the emphasis is beyond
random enforcement of rules.
Right. Because Andre was saying, I think this year's NCAA women's tournament has too many soft fouls being called. Completely agree with that. I have just been so disappointed with the way the games have been called. Just all the way around, everything that I've seen, like interest is at an all-time high in the women's game right now, but you're calling these games like you're refereeing an 8th grade, middle school game someplace. And you're trying to teach, it's like, oh, don't get carried away with those hand checks there.
Yeah.
Let's not do that.
Right.
It's been ridiculous the way some of these games have been called. Many of these games have been called. So Hidalgo had an off day.
Yeah.
Obviously, she goes 4 of 17 from the field. And we talked about flow of the game and all that kind of stuff. Tied her season low with 10 points. 4 of those points came in the fourth quarter in that game. So you could see Niele Ivey talking to her a few times, off to the side as well. And here's Ivey talking about what they were talking about in those conversations.
My conversations is, again, just was trying to help her, and she was a little frustrated with a couple of her shots that normally go in. Just my conversations is just empower her, lift her up, positive words of encouragement, knowing that you just got to get to the next play. It's okay. The game is not perfect. And so she knows that. Just trying to build confidence in her in any way that I can, and just I was trying to hug her, get herself, any moment, she's the type of player that can take over, so it was mostly just words of encouragement and positivity.
So what do you think, Vince?
I think that obviously Niele and Hannah have a very close relationship. I think that she knows what she needs to say to Hannah in order to get to her. But you know what? Everybody has an off night, and this was not her night. And you can blame it on the 4-minute stretch she got pulled out. Maybe her headspace, went someplace else, and she had an off night, and that happens. And then you hope that your teammates can step up and help you out. I mean, look, at the end of the day, they lost by 5 points. They were in the game the entire way from everything that I could tell. And so even with Hannah only scoring 10 points, they were right there. The game was there for the taking. And we're harping on this rule and it's stupid and all of those different things. But at the end of the day, best player on the team didn't have a great day. And I think that this is building, and Niele knows this because she's seen the big picture. She's been to the mountaintop, right? She's building up Hannah Hidalgo to be the leader on this team moving forward. She's a true freshman. This is her first NCAA tournament. It means it's her first Sweet 16 game. And all of these firsts are happening. And so she has to get her to understand, soak in the moment, know what you need to do because we're coming back. Like, we're going to be back here. Like, that's the message that I would have been giving. Like, hey, it's not your night. It's okay. But shooters got to shoot. Keep doing your thing. Keep going out there, being you, because this is what you've been all year. Go keep being you. But this is just the beginning. We're going to be back. We're going to make more noise. And It's going to be great. Like there's no point in being negative in that moment. None.
No, and I mean that's it seems like when you kind of hear the way she interacts, there are times when she gets on Hannah.
Of course,
just like any other player.
Yeah.
There obviously are, but especially again, it'll happen in the course of a game as well. But like especially in a situation like this, it's not like Hidalgo wants to be in that situation. But you could tell when she came back, like she, just sort of the look she had on her
Wasn't
face,
in the right
and just it got off. But I think that the way that Niele Ivey stays focused on these positive things and just basically tries to like get them redirected in the right headspace, the positive headspace. I think it's really important for high level athletes. And like you look at Niele Ivey's NBA background, that year she spent with the Memphis Grizzlies, that there are a lot of things that she brought back from that. And I think, that this is part of it as well, because, like an NBA season is obviously it's a lot longer than a college basketball season, but you can't let one game affect the next. You know what I mean? Like you've got to be able to put it behind you and move on, just like you've got to be able to put a bad play or a bad series of plays behind you and move on. And, just dwelling with that negative stuff is not going to help anything.
Right.
Like think about it. If you're at work and your boss says something positive to you and then follows that with something negative, what's going to stick in your brain?
The negative.
Going to be the negative. That's
all
right.
The time.
That's right. Like if you're going to get, you're going to get the momentum going back in the right direction, got to stick with the positive. And that's kind of a general philosophy of hers, I think. And I think that it tends to work out pretty well many more times than not.
Yep, absolutely. And again, she's a true freshman. She's got a bunch of Notre Dame basketball in her future, right? And so coming in hot negatively is not the way to go with this.
Exactly. There were Anthony. He says, are face masks for broken noses illegal? Aren't they headwear? They are technically headwear.
Good call.
And, like, do you have to have? I'm going to guess that they, don't make anyone give any, like medical certificate as proof, but it's absolutely a kind of headwear. You're absolutely right about that.
Yep.
Like in the
selectively enforcing rules, man.
Right. Reagan Beers, the Oregon State player, was wearing one of them. I mean, the way the rule reads, anything that you put on your head, basically anything that you put on your head is illegal. The way the rule reads, right? Because going back to the headwear thing, like it's a pretty loose definition of what you can. It's not even a definition. It just says headwear. And as you said, Vince, so does that make a sweatband illegal? Does that make one of these medical face masks illegal? There's a lot of room for interpretation in there,
and that's
not specifically spelled out,
right?
Except for helmets and jewelry.
Stupid.
It is.
And you know what? And I'll say this: I bet you that rule was written for earrings, not nose rings. You know what I mean? Like it was meant for earrings. But I digress.
So even though the shots weren't falling, Hidalgo kept on playing defense out there. And Ivey had some comments on the defense that Hidalgo was playing and just kind of what that means to the team as well. If I can find it, I don't think. Oh, there it is.
All right. Well, it's the first part, like her defense, and like she's gonna give us her all. That's what she loves, playing defense. That's her money. Is her intensity defensively. She feeds off of being disruptive, and her shot wasn't falling today, and I feel like she was trying to get herself going, by being a pest on defense, and she got a couple backcourt violations, which is awesome. She's never gonna stop playing, regardless. And so defensively, I love her intensity, and it's been contagious with our team all season long. I love that part of her game.
Yeah, so Oregon State was 5 of 8 in the fourth quarter, high percentage. They only attempted 8 shots. Hidalgo forced a pair of 10-second backcourt violations, and that was, that's kind of how, as Neil was, alluding to there, how she sort of, keeps herself in the game, is continuing to invest herself in the defensive side, even when things weren't going right. And I think that you could say that across the board for Notre Dame. Like, they kept playing defense even when the shots weren't falling. And you could probably argue that, maybe even it ended up being, not intentionally, obviously, but it maybe ended up being a little bit to their detriment, just because of the fact that they were investing so much. Again, Oregon State only took 8 shots in the fourth quarter. Notre Dame took 21. The problem was Notre Dame only hit 6 of those 21 shots. And, like when you look at the rebound, differential, the fact that Oregon State out-rebounded them, but, it's because Notre Dame unfortunately missed more shots.
Yeah,
and Oregon State had a 6'4" and a 6'3" player who were just gobbling up rebounds out there as a result, because they had the post advantage. That was huge advantage for them going into the game, and it played out that way.
I think I heard that Oregon State had 10 players on the roster that were 6 foot or taller. I mean, again, if Notre Dame has an Achilles heel, it's going to be the post right now, especially with Kylie Watson being down, right? And it's going to be rebounding and all of that. And again, it was a 5-point game. It's not like they got absolutely dominated, okay? But that was a point of emphasis, I'm sure, for Oregon State. Hey, if we out rebound them, we got a chance to win this game.
Yeah.
And that's what ended up happening.
So there's 6'4" post who was wearing the face mask. Reagan Beers, 18 points, 13 rebounds. And Tamia Gardner,
illegal
6'3". Yeah. Illegal face mask.
Throw her out.
Tamia Gardner, 21 points and 11 boards, 24 rebounds between them. I mean, my goodness. And but Notre Dame had 12 fast break points in the first half, and defense was a part of it. I felt like Notre Dame, they knew that they had that the advantage was to Oregon State when it came to the post. And it was a tough task. I thought Nat Marshall battled hard all the game, going up against Beers, especially when Beers probably had a good 50 pounds on her. And, like, as physical as she plays, Marshall was giving it back as much as she could. And she forced a couple of turnovers in the first half that led to some of those fast break points. Notre Dame did as well as they could. The unfortunate thing was they just weren't able to consistently hit shots. But, most of that came in the fourth quarter, their worst shooting quarter, when, again, I just think that what they were investing at the defensive end kind of caught up with their legs a little bit at the offensive end. They did settle for some jump shots. They weren't able to knock them down, unfortunately. And you end up losing to a good team by 5 points.
No doubt. And that's what sucks is, they were off offensively. Every offensive number that you can look at for Notre Dame was below their season average. It just did not look good offensively shooting the basketball. And it was an epidemic, unfortunately, for the entire team. Not just Hannah. I mean, they just did not shoot well. So, and which provided more rebounding opportunities, obviously, for Oregon State. So, just stinks that that's the way they had to go out.
Yeah, James here in the chat is mad about the way Hidalgo, like her minutes were managed. And so, again, it's like you had a short bench all year, and he's saying, well, maybe DeWolf and BB, who's BB? Bransford, maybe. I don't know. KK Bransford, is that who you're referring to? I mean, look, Hidalgo led the nation in steals. She was the ACC Defensive Player of the Year. You needed her at both ends of the floor. Yeah. Look at all those close games that you played in that 10-game winning streak. There was maybe one gimme in that whole stretch, maybe 2. The Boston College game. Yep. I think the Wake Forest game came before that. So it's like you needed her down that stretch. And look, you got a couple, you got a lot of extra time off in between the ACC tournament, the NCAA tournament. That wasn't an issue. I don't think that was an issue at all. I think that she was ready for it. I think the team was ready for it. It's just, the bigger issue is because of so many injuries, you didn't have some extra moves that you could go to. And the game plan would have looked a lot different for the entire season if they had all those extra players.
Right. Oh, 100%. And you could have given her a little bit more time off and things like that. The problem was the drop off from her to the next person is so great. You need her on both ends of the floor. She's your best player. She's your best player. And the postseason accolades tell you that. And so It's not easy to just take that person off the floor. The ball handler, the best defensive player you have, your on-ball defender, I should say. That's tough to do. That's tough to do with a short bench. So hopefully next year, they'll be able to do that some more, but we'll see.
Tommy's saying, though, that the rules are known, follow them, or don't be surprised when you get told to leave the game. You don't know that the rules were known. Like, literally, again, Hannah Hidalgo is not the only player in the nation wearing nose rings this year. The Ole Miss coach herself said that her players were wearing nose rings and jewelry all season long. It sounds like this was not a very known rule at all. And the fact that they chose, to that point, the biggest weekend of the season, Sweet 16, Elite 8, chance to get to the Final Four. That was the time that, as Don Saley said, they decided they had the stamina to try to enforce it.
Right.
It's a joke. It's a joke that's when they would decide, to start pushing this thing.
And like I said, there are so many rules in every sport that are selectively or not even at all enforced. They're just not. Okay. Like, for example, knee pads in NFL football. When was the last time you saw an NFL player wear a knee pad?
Right.
That wasn't a lineman.
Or hip pad.
That's what I'm saying. So, check that out. And I guarantee you in the rule book, it says that you have to have knee pads, thigh pads, the whole deal. And wide receivers are basically out there wearing spandex, and that's it. So, but those rules aren't enforced. So that's just an example.
Here's Father David. If it's a rule, fine, but then enforce it start to finish. And I think that's the point. If this was really a rule that needed to be enforcing, everyone should have been informed when the season started. Here's a point of emphasis this season: jewelry. Don't wear it during a game.
Right.
Helmets. Don't wear them during a game.
We're all going to tune in and we're all going to watch LSU Iowa tonight. Okay. I guarantee you there's people with headwear, and I would almost guarantee you there's going to be some jewelry worn too. So I mean, not that I'm going to be able
we're all
to stop
going to be
it.
looking for it now, right?
I am.
Here's what gets me though, because all this, all these extra things, like sitting as close to the court as I sit, the big thing the last couple years has been these big, like the fake eyelashes.
Oh yeah.
Fake eyelashes are a thing.
Yes.
It seems to me like, one of those stupid things falls off. It's like, you're going to do yourself a lot more harm than, a nose ring or whatever else, because there's a much greater chance that one of those things is going to fall off over the course of the basketball.
Those things, it's like
they're not complaining about eyelashes.
Man,
I think that falls into the headwear category, doesn't it?
It's technically jewelry is the way I look at it.
Yeah, it's an addition.
It's not natural, that's for sure.
Like I said, a lot of players wearing those extensions out there. I think there's a girl you'll see from UConn later tonight as well. Like, it's pretty obvious that she's got extensions on. She's got like the gold braids, it's like they alternate. Like, it seems like that would fit under the definition of headwear to me. If it's not your natural hair and you're wearing it on the back of your head, that seems like headwear to me. And when it's that long, when it comes down to your waist and you can, fling your head around and whatever, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. Salty wants to know which school rules points of emphasis for you. Which do you let slide? Which point of emphasis?
Hats. We let that one slide. Technically it's a rule in the handbook, but we don't enforce it. So there you go. So it happens everywhere. Now I'm not saying the hat rule, but I'm saying in general, rules. You gotta pick your battles too. At some point, the hat rule is a battle we do not pick.
Vince, are you ready for rapid fire?
Yes, let's do it.
Let's go.
Fire me. Let's go.
All right. Fill in the blank. Notre Dame cornerback Clarence Lewis announcing he's entering the portal after 6 spring practices is blank.
Disappointing. It's disappointing. And I'm not saying it's disappointing because I was anticipating him to be a starter or anything like that. But he's a guy Obviously, he's been with the program for 5 years. He's a guy that knows the defense. He knows the university. He knows the program. He's the guy you need in that room as a leader because, that room is not very old, to be honest with you. If you're talking the entire secondary, that room is not very old. If you're talking about just the corners, it's really not very old. Okay, so having him around and being a ready-to-go backup, a second-string guy who can come in if there's an injury, not going to be a bunch of drop-off, he's going to be in the right place at the right time, that kind of a thing. He's limited athletically, which is why he's not a starter. But it is disappointing. I'm sure he wants to go start someplace. I'm sure that's obviously what it is. He sees the writing on the wall. Okay, fine. But from a depth standpoint, it's disappointing as a Notre Dame fan.
And that's great if you want to go start someplace, but why didn't you just enter the portal in January and move on and do your thing? Or either that or, I guess it's better off for both you and, well, not even you, because not you, him, for Clarence Lewis. I was going to say it's better off for him and the team to do it now. It's better off for the team because now they get to see a lot more players, because if he had waited until the end of spring and then done it, it's like,
Sure.
Well, he was getting all these reps that could be going to somebody else. So from that aspect, I think you're better off as a team right now, but there is a lot of youth and inexperience, and the timing of the whole thing, doing it like you would have thought that after the Benjamin Morrison injury, that this opens a door for Clarence Lewis for possibilities for more opportunities, because whatever uncertainty is going to be there with Benjamin Morrison and, in terms of his return. But, this is a guy who obviously has a lot of experience. He's played like 50 games over the last 4 years, came up big his freshman year against Clemson in 2020 and the win over Clemson and all that stuff. He was a bit of a luxury. Never really took that next step, though. Kind of always.
Yeah, that's fair.
Stayed in that mid-range, and some of these younger guys passed him up. So I don't begrudge him for wanting to go and have an opportunity somewhere, but it just seems very odd that he would kind of waste his time and everyone else's time by doing it 6 practices into the spring.
Yeah.
It just seems very odd time to do it.
You're right. The timing is very odd. Something must have happened. That's the only way I can look at it. Something must have happened behind the scenes where he didn't climb the depth chart like he thought maybe after the injury, or something must have just made it super clear that he wasn't going to get what he wanted. You know what I mean? And he's like, well, might as well do it now. And since he's a graduate, he can do it. He doesn't have to wait for the window to open. And so that gives him an opportunity to get a head start on the window, the portal window, right? Because that doesn't even open until middle of April, I think. And so maybe he looks at it as, well, I better do it now, get a head start on this thing, because it's pretty clear I'm not going to be the guy here. I don't know.
Tommy's saying he got passed by a younger guy. Look, it's spring. Like, are we going to base, spring depth chart? Look at the offensive line that Notre Dame had last year and some other spots as well. The depth charts were far from set by the 6th practice of spring. So if you're going to let getting past, he'd already been passed by younger guys.
Well, yeah, because he wasn't starting last year.
Virtually everyone out there was younger than him to begin with.
Right.
So
for the last couple of years.
With the exception of Cam Hart. Right. Everyone else was younger than him. Yeah. So I don't know. Fill in the blank. Notre Dame men's basketball player Carrie Booth entering the portal today is blank.
Surprising again, because it felt like, he started, I think, the last 9 or 10 games of the season. It felt like he was going to be part of the foundation of what, Micah Shrewsbury wanted to do moving forward. He committed to Penn State when Micah was there. As soon as Micah came to Notre Dame, Carrie Booth followed. And so you figure, he's a Micah Shrewsbury guy. I think that it's interesting timing. I will say that his announcement is interesting because it says all options are on the table, including coming back to Notre Dame.
Yeah.
What that says to me, this is my opinion only. My opinion. Sounds like where's the money going to be, baby? If Notre Dame can step up to the plate, give me some coin, I'll stick around. Maybe I can find some greener pastures.
There's upside in Carrie Booth's game, but this is also a guy who averaged 6.5 points and 4.5 rebounds. And
had one big game against Virginia.
Yeah, he had some nice games. There's a lot of upside. I'm not trying to knock him, but I mean, is he really going to get that much NIL money out there? Like, is somebody going to dangle that much? It just feels like if you stick around at Notre Dame and you perform at Notre Dame, you're going to have a chance to make some of that here.
Absolutely.
It just seems, again, like, I don't know. I think this is just the world we live in, though. You finish your freshman year,
see what else
you're a solid contributor.
Yeah.
Like Stymie, I saw the comment that Stymie had. He was hoping, that this young core was going to stick around and grow together. And that's what's most disappointing about this whole thing, because he's the freshman and there's a ton of upside that I think you can see in Carrie Booth, and the way he played down the stretch showed that upside. And that's what's most disappointing about it, because of all that. Because I think that we all kind of thought that, well, this is a guy who's going to be around and help turn this program around. But as it turns out, there's just one more spot potentially that Micah Shrewsbury has to go out and fill with someone from the portal himself now.
Yeah. Well, and Father David makes a good point. He's like, there was a couple of times where Micah Shrewsbury went off in a post-game press conference about effort and all of that. Was Carrie Booth one of those guys? You know what I mean? Like, we don't know everything. We don't know everything that happened behind closed doors. Maybe that relationship is a little strained, because of that. And look, Micah Shrewsbury made it very obvious and very clear. If you don't want to be that guy, we'll find a place for you.
And I mean, and this is a guy who comes from an NBA family. His dad, Calvin, is the general manager of the Denver Nuggets. So you're exactly right. Like what some of those expectations / entitlements or whatever might be. We don't know exactly how any of that look, but I think maybe you can factor some of that stuff in there.
And since we're bringing up NIL, I'm sure people are starting to twitch and they're getting worried that Marcus Burton is going to leave for, NIL money. I can tell you through some sources that he did sign an NIL deal with a company that is very close with Notre Dame. So don't see him going anywhere anytime soon due to that. So I think we're going to see Marcus Burton in a Notre Dame uniform for a while.
Yeah, from what I understand, with when the basketball seasons were winding down, there were a lot of different internal conversations over there about, okay, this person's going to need this much NIL money. This person's going to need this for both programs, basically. So there's a lot of this kind of stuff that's going on, and it's only going to become more prominent.
Oh, yeah.
Year. So maybe, like if NIL was a huge factor for Carrie Booth, maybe he ended up not getting nearly as much as he thought he was
That's
supposed
possible.
to. And
it's definitely possible.
And as you said, maybe that's why he's leaving open the door that if he doesn't get greener pasture someplace else, that he's like, I'll just come back and take this and see what happens.
I just don't know that the market's going to be that big. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. I just think he's a project, and I don't know if many schools are looking for projects right now. At least not paying him a bunch of NIL money.
I concur. It'd be one thing if he averaged, even 10 points and say 7 rebounds or something like that as a freshman in the ACC. Yeah.
Right.
Or even, closer to 10 rebounds, even if the points weren't, something like that where he really stood out as a freshman in the ACC. He was a solid young player in the ACC.
Sure.
But not someone that I think a lot of programs are going to say, man, I got to bank myself on that.
I think it's a lot of programs be like, he'd be nice to have as a depth piece.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? But it's not going to be a blank check to get him to come over. You know what I mean? So I guess it just depends on how deep the NIL pockets are of whatever school he would be interested in. But I just don't see the market being that massive. I just don't.
Yeah. Joe's saying, do you think future deals with companies will include NIL deals? I'm assuming you're talking about like corporate sponsorships and stuff like that. And I mean, like
I'm sure they do.
Under Armour, there's NIL stuff. Like Dick's Sporting Goods is one of the Team Notre Dame sponsors this year. And Audric Estime, you might remember, did something with Dick's Sporting Goods. I think it was back before, like, around the time training camp was getting ready to start. He did an NIL type appearance out there with Dick's. So I think that
absolutely
pretty much, any of these companies who are getting involved being, corporate partners with Notre Dame, there is going to be some kind of NIL component involved with that.
Well, and there was always, even back in the day before NIL was a thing, when companies would sign on with Notre Dame to be sponsors, they would have internships and they would have, opportunities from the academic side, for student athletes to be a part of that company and things like that. So it only makes sense that NIL would also be a part of that as well.
Now, Salty's saying Hidalgo has a huge NIL opportunity with companies that sell nose rings. I don't know if you saw, but this weekend there was a local jewelry seller. Hannah, do you remember the Hidalgo's hoops that they were using?
Oh, yeah.
The promotional thing? There's a local jeweler that is going to start selling Hannah Hidalgo's gold hoop earrings. So I would think that nose rings seem to make a good companion with the hoop earrings as well. I would capitalize on that as much as I can if I'm Hannah Hidalgo.
100%.
Make the best of a bad situation.
100%. Absolutely.
Yep. Fill in the blank. There was more controversy at the Women's Elite Eight yesterday in Portland when the head coaches of Texas and North Carolina State discovered the three-point lines at the opposite ends of the floor were not the same distance. And that is blank.
Embarrassing is what that is. That's embarrassing. You can't even, we always not make fun of, but we always reference Hoosiers, and they walk in
Measure.
and they drop the measure. It's 10 feet, just like our gym, whatever. Guess not. I guess it's not the same. Come on, man. This is simple measurement and math. How are we messing this up?
Update on this today. Apparently, the company that makes these courts is Connor Sports. And they went back and did an inspection of the court to try to figure out what happened. They found out there's a center hole punch that they put at a certain spot. And from there, they do the radius of the three-point line. Apparently, at the one end of the court, that center hole was punched 9 inches off. And so it caused the three-point line. That's almost a foot.
That's a lot.
And they played 4 games on that court before anyone noticed it.
Wow.
As soon as they started talking about this on TV and they showed the court yesterday, it was obvious.
Oh, yeah.
That one three-point line was much, it was farther away than the other one. And it turned out it was 9 inches off. So
that's even more embarrassing, Sean.
I know.
I'm sorry. 9 inches is a lot. That's embarrassing. That is embarrassing.
And it's the Texas coach said afterwards that he, was hearing from colleagues across the sport saying, basically only in women's basketball could something like this happen. And remember, it was just a few years ago when they were playing the tournament in the bubble down there in San Antonio that all the controversy arose from
the gyms.
The difference in the facilities, the men's versus the women's. It's you got one job. Can you make the court right? It doesn't seem like it could be that hard.
That's literally their job, is to make courts.
Yeah. And then, the whole, measure twice, cut once thing, it feels like after you complete it, I guess, if you're going to go that far, you would be doing all the measurements to make sure that everything's right and you haven't screwed something up before you send them off again to Sweet 16 Elite 8 sites. Pretty important pieces of equipment that you're working on.
And the inside the three-point line and outside the three-point line, inside is stained, you know what I mean? And as as you're sitting there staining it by hand, you don't notice this much difference,
right?
And how much more area that you have to paint. How did this slip through so many people? And it was never caught. And the fact that they played 4 games on it.
That's why I can't believe all these warm-ups and coaches and everything else, players shooting, no one noticed 9 inches is a huge difference from one end of the floor to the other. I can't believe that no one, because again, all you had to do is see the side shot of that floor, and it was obvious very quickly how big a difference there was. I can't believe nobody noticed that through all those games.
I know.
A day of practice, the first, the whole thing.
Seriously.
Very odd.
I was waiting to see who would have the inappropriate comment. Stymie wins the battle on that one.
Oh, boy.
I mean, you knew it was coming.
So Caitlin Clark leads Iowa against Angel Reese and LSU in an Elite Eight rematch of last year's women's national championship game tonight. Last year's title game, the most watched women's game ever, had an average of 9.9 million viewers. At its peak, it was over 10 million. How close to that number do you think tonight's game will get?
I think it'll get really close. I really do. I think this is the first real test for Iowa. I think that with all the controversy that LSU brings to the table with their coach and with their players, and then you added Haley Van Lith to the roster, and she's a whatever.
It's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
She's a whatever.
Yeah. I mean, LSU is an easy team to dislike. I'll just put it that way. And, I've got a bunch of coworkers at school who texted me about how excited they are to watch the game tonight. And they don't watch a whole lot of women's basketball, obviously. And they're like fired up to watch this game tonight. And so I think they're going to get darn close to it. I think the national championship game might be a letdown if that's the case. I really do.
Well, especially if Iowa loses tonight. We'll talk about that in a second. I think tonight, it's got to get somewhere at least 8 million. I think it's got to be around that number.
Yeah.
And
I'm going to tune in.
It a little bit that it's a Monday night and not a Sunday night, but
fair.
I think that they were kind of saving this because now, you've got Iowa, LSU, and then you've got UConn, USC, and obviously USC isn't as big a name, but you've got Juju Watkins and all that with USC, another first-team All-American going up against Paige Beckers. And, so you've got, definitely the early game is the one to watch, the 7:00 game, which is actually just getting ready to get started here right now, Iowa and LSU. I think it's I think it's got to get somewhere around 8 million. I would be shocked if it doesn't get that.
Yeah, this is going to be a big one.
But the follow-up then, if LSU wins, do you buy or sell tonight's game getting higher ratings than any of the Final Four games next weekend? If LSU beats Iowa tonight, do you think tonight's game is going to be higher viewed than any of next weekend's Final Four games?
100%. There's no doubt in my mind, because as much as people hate LSU, they love Caitlin Clark more. And so Caitlin Clark needs to be in this tournament to get the ratings. It absolutely needs to happen.
I think so too.
So they lose, it's over.
Again, like you've got, I guess LSU is still a little bit of a draw because of all the recent Kim Mulkey controversy and all that stuff. And it's like the Washington Post should be sending her gift certificates to nuts.com for all the attention, that she helped draw to that story that, was probably barely going to be read.
Because all they care about is clicks.
Yeah.
They don't care about anything else. Come on now.
All anyone, as soon as the story dropped, all anyone wanted to see was, okay, is this as bad as Kim Mulkey said it was going to be? And then it was nothing. Turned out to be the LA Times that had the crazy story.
Hilarious.
But, so you've at least got that and Angel Reese and, Flo J and all that kind of stuff. But like South Carolina, for whatever reason, for as successful as they've been, they still don't sort of move the needle. I guess it's because they don't have enough crazy over there. Maybe that's it, but they don't move the needle the same. Again, Juju Watkins, UConn, I think everyone kind of seems to be like past UConn at this point, but
they're just,
yeah,
I don't know. Yeah, you're probably right. They probably are. They haven't been as dominating as they had been in the past. You know what I mean? And
I think tonight will be the highest rated game of the year. And if Iowa loses, I don't think next weekend's games have a chance. What everyone, wants to see is potentially another Iowa South Carolina matchup.
100%.
So, yep. All right, men's side, it's UConn against Alabama, Purdue against NC State in the Final Four. How many of those teams did you predict, Vince?
Ooh, man. Some. Let me see. I got my bracket right here. Let's see here. Where is my bracket? There we go. So, Final Four, I had UConn and Purdue. So, I had 50%.
All right.
50%. So, not
John
too bad.
said he had 50%. I had UConn. That was it. I had Purdue going out. Didn't have NC State in any world. And this NC State team is basically trying to pull off the same Cinderella that Jimmy V and that Wolfpack crew pulled off the last time they were in the Final Four. That's the last time they were there, 1983, which is amazing. DJ Burns, man, he's getting NFL interest apparently right now. 6'9",
Wow.
275.
That big boy?
Yeah, guys wanted
I saw him live at Notre Dame, and I was like, that is an offensive tackle, not a basketball player. Yep. But watching him go up against Zach Edey is going to be must-see TV, in my opinion.
It's going to be fun. Yeah,
that's good. You want to talk about contrasting styles?
Yep,
you just found it. I think that's going to be fun to watch.
I tell you what, man, that 30-0 run in that UConn Illinois game was just insane.
Woof!
It's like Brad Underwood adjust. He just went down with the ship, man. He's like, this is what we do. We're going to keep doing it. And Donovan Clingan was like, get it out of here.
Man.
Rejected back into the stands. Somehow they only credit him with 5 blocks. It seemed like he had 1 million. Man, he was just everything. Just rejection. 7'2".
I had
him in Connecticut too.
Yeah, I had the other 2 Tobacco Road teams. I had UNC and Duke in my Final Four. So they almost made it, but they did not. So
that'll be a fun little matchup, like you said. Burns against Zach Edey in that NC State Purdue game. Looking forward to seeing that.
Yes. Where are you in our bracket challenge?
Oh, I have no chance. I don't know. I stopped. I stopped looking at it a long time ago. Okay. I'm probably like in 80th place.
I'm in 17th place. I'm still in the neighborhood.
You've done pretty well. UConn is the only team that I had getting to the Final Four. I had Houston winning it all, so I have no chance at winning anything.
No chance.
So, nope. All right, well, that's going to do it for tonight. Going to go watch some basketball now, and of course, we will be back tomorrow as always. So appreciate you being here. Hit the like button before you leave, and of course, make sure you're listening on Apple if you are an Apple podcast subscriber. It is much appreciated. As always, we will talk to you tomorrow. Have a good one. Ivy Nation Sports Talk.